right. What's up, Mike? Mike is there. There's Mike. What's up, Mike?
What's up, Monty?
This is weird because your picture is there, but you were here. So I gotta
Okay.
talk to that. So
I told you, you need to put those little googly eyes over your.
it's even if I did, your picture is over there doing all the talking. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. But so okay, so were you about to ask me something before I started?
Was I going to ask you something? No.
Okay. So I wanted to do two things because first today's Mother's Day, right? So I want to ask you. I mean, we both are motherless, right? But I can go. I've been motherless for 30 years, so I wanted to ask you. This is so weird. Your picture's there, but anyways, I wanted to ask you, like,
yeah.
When you think of your mother, like, and you take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, however long you want to go. Like, you think of your mother. What are some of the characteristics, some of the life lessons that she impressed on you that made you become the Michael that you are now?
Wow, man. Okay, well, that's super complicating. Super complicated, I guess I should say.
Okay, well, okay. Let me ask you a different question. Tell me a story about something that happened when you were a kid that left an impression upon you, between just an interaction between you and your mother that left an impression on you that made you become who you are now.
Okay, so I have, well, in terms of how it molded me in terms of who I am, I'm not sure, but I have a very distinct, I have like a top memory. Like I've got a lot of memories of my mom, but like one of the number one memories I have of her is, which is very indicative of her sort of character, is when I was a kid. I can't remember exactly when, but sometime in elementary school, I think we were tasked to bring in a breakfast food. We were going to do some sort of breakfast thing for for homeroom or something like that, for one of my classes. I think I was maybe third grade, maybe. Like it was elementary school at some point.
Is that Rockbridge?
And I think so, at Rockbridge, yeah. And so, me being me, I'm not sure exactly how much notice we had, but I told my mom at 6 a.m., like the morning of the morning of school. I think I woke up at I think I woke up at something like that, like some super early in the morning. And I told my mom about it. And I was like, oh, Mom, by the way, I need to bring in some breakfast food, some kind of breakfast food for everyone in the class. And I think specifically I was supposed to bring hash browns for everyone in our class, right? And my mom was like, what are you talking about? And so three things you need to understand. Number one, from my mother's point of view, she worked all day, every day. So she was someone that I think it might have been, now that I'm thinking about it, it must have been earlier than 6, because I think generally at that time she was going to work around 6-ish. So I needed to do it before she left for work. So this was probably like 5 something. So it was probably like super early in the morning, but the window was really small before her having to go to work. So that's number one. And she had probably come home late that previous night. So she probably came in late, went straight to bed, woke up at, or I woke her up. I shook her up, at like 5 something in the morning, told her, hey, I need hash browns for everyone in my school, or not everyone in my school, everyone in my class. Second thing you need to know is, like, nowadays there are like microwave hash browns and like instant hash browns and things that you can just make.
Yep.
You can get at the grocery store. But back at that time, so this was 30 some years ago, that stuff did not exist.
No.
I don't even know where you would get hash browns. Frankly speaking, like at that time, I don't know where you would get hash browns.
Well, you probably at that time, you probably didn't even realize that hash browns came from like raw potatoes, right? Like your mom just
Yeah,
made
or just
magic
like
happen.
exactly
Right?
like as a kid, I didn't really know. Like I didn't really understand anything as a kid, and I don't have all the memories, but all I know is like in terms of it was like hash browns, early morning hash browns, and I'm just like my mom, and I remember her like being like super super sleepy and just kind of like, what are you doing? What's going on? And uh, like, and that was the other thing. I think that was also again, so hash browns, like where you bought hash browns, no idea. And at that time also, I want to say that there weren't like 24-hour businesses or businesses that were open super early.
No.
Were pretty rare. And so, but here's the thing. If you were to look at that set of circumstances, it could have easily been a situation where she's just like, just go to school, man. Like you take an L. You're taking an L. You're gonna go and just go tell your classmates, I couldn't come up with the hash browns, or I couldn't do whatever, or you know, eat it myself, or just like, okay, it was my fault, or just go and you have to deal with the punishment of being last minute. So there could have been any number of things, any sort of negative scenarios. But my mom went out at crazy early in the morning. She showed up with 2 boxes of hash browns, frozen hash browns. And I want to say, I could be wrong, but I think she went to McDonald's and bought 2 racks of frozen hash browns straight from like a McDonald's, like some kid working at McDonald's.
Oh,
and she
that's
just
amazing.
went up to them and
that's
said,
amazing.
because I remember distinctly that it was the oval, they were frozen oval hash browns. And I'm just like, at that time, those did not exist anywhere except for at McDonald's. And I'm just like, I remember thinking like, I've never even seen these uncooked before.
That's right.
But so like she somehow, like I said, she wizarded this solution up in this crazy narrow hour. And she didn't, and like I said, awesome. She didn't just like, I wake her up in, early morning and she's just like, what are you doing, moron? I'm going to sleep, or just go to school. She went out and did it. She went out and got it done in a situation where I'm just like, and to this day, I have no idea how she did it, how she pulled it off. Because like, if I went to McDonald's today, there's no way they would give me like, they'd be like, I'm not giving you 2 racks of frozen hash browns. Like, there's like health code violation. Who knows what's going on? Yeah. But somehow, she got enough. Like, I think, she got enough for like 30. She came up with like 30 hash browns, 30 frozen hash browns in like an hour. Like being like sleepy eyed, like how she did that. Like, that's so crazy to me. So that's like one of the most, because that's something that I've revisited a number of times in my life where, in the moment, I was actually kind of disappointed in her, weirdly, because like at that time I'm just like, how are we supposed to cook these or whatever? I remember like thinking like, this is not good enough at that time. But then like, I remember looking back at various stages of my life, I'm just like, wow, just blown away and just peeling the onion back of just like at so many different levels, being so shocked at so many different levels of what she did that morning. And that's very indicative of a lot of how she was for me.
That's one of the reasons why, and it's one of the reasons why the 2-parent family is so important. There's one reason why the 2-parent family is so important, because that's what
my dad could beat my ass for.
Well, what a mother does for a boy, for her son, and what a father does for his daughter. It's almost kind of like cross multiplication, right? Because if I were the father and I had a son who came to me at 6 a.m. and say, "Oh, Dad, oh, by the way, we need these hash browns. I was like, hey, listen, you didn't say anything about this. You're gonna take some apples tomorrow. And it's the balance. It's the balance between nurturing and accepting consequences for your actions. And that balance is so important for kids, because for example with my daughter, like my daughter she'll call me sometimes to come home from school, like, oh, my head hurts, and like as a father, it's very easy for me to say, you know what, your head hurts. Let's just scrap the whole post school routine. But as a father, I know, hey, listen, there are consequences. Your head hurts, okay, fine. You're not watching YouTube today. And then I say that, and her head perks up like, well, it doesn't hurt that bad. So, okay, then you got to practice piano. You got to finish your homework. You got to do your tablet work. And depends on the day, you got to do your English work. And then you can sit down and watch YouTube, and she perks up, right? But there's that balance, right? Because if I had a son and he said like, oh, my head hurts, I'd be like, hey, man, if your head hurts and there's no YouTube today, you're going to finish your homework and go to sleep early. And he's gonna like, why would you let her watch YouTube and not me? It's like, hey, man, listen, you're a grown ass man. You're gonna be a grown ass man. There's repercussions for your little decisions, right? So that's one of the amazing thing about mothers, right? And I think this is where we as men get into trouble in our dating situations. There's no way a woman can love us the same way. There's just simply not. Like, we meet a woman and she says, oh, I love you and I care for you and I want to start a family with you. She could have a baby and you guys have your own family. She cannot love you the way she loves that child. Like, that is just different, right? So when she has that child, she said, hey, listen, I'm ready to sacrifice my whole life for you. But you over there, you grown ass man, you need to be a grown ass man. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's the difference, right? Like, there's only one person in our life that can love us like our mom, because we came out of her, right?
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting that because I feel like this is something that you're very adamant about. And for me, it's very curious because I have no idea. Because in the same way, I can only guess, because I can't have a life, gestate inside of me and come out. And like, I don't know about any sort of emotional attachment. I don't know what more or how different the attachment, I don't know what that's like. And I don't know how that affects me.
Yeah.
How that would affect me emotionally, psychologically, and if there's some sort of other sort of bond, like even that physical bond. I'm not sure.
The postpartum depression and all that, right?
Or who knows, right?
Yeah.
Like, all of that sort of physiological sort of dynamic. But it's interesting for me, like, I can agree with you in principle that, like, yeah, like I can imagine why that maybe like my wife cannot love me the same way that she loves our son. But I don't know. Like, I have no, like, I can only imagine it, but I don't know for sure. Because the thing is, it's like, the other part of it is that I feel like the concept of love itself is very ephemeral. It's like because it's hard to define, because, maybe there are times, because, I have like sort of a number of different theories or feelings about love itself. But like, just think about the process that you went through yourself in terms of trying to figure out what love was. Because I've been convinced that I was in love 6, maybe 7 times before I met my wife. And each time I was convinced that I was right. Each time I was convinced, like, oh, I will never love someone that I love like I love this person. And in some, in a very whole and sincere way. But then each time, like, I went through like different phases of like, okay, well, it's not more, it's different, and this and that, and then and like I went through all this stuff, and then like with my wife now, I'm just like, no, this is it. this is
Yeah.
this is what it is. But the thing is, at the end of the day, I don't know, because there might be something like something might come along out of my ignorance. I'm not
Well,
waiting for something more,
yeah.
but I can only base my own affection, or my own sort of my emotions on my own experience. Because it's only as good as what I perceive. And which, like I can never tell my wife that. She
Well, but
she would
and
never
this
understand that.
this is what I would say in response to that.
Yeah.
I'm 44, so I've gone through the whole this love. A lot of the idea of what love is for our generation is very Disneyfied. It's very Disneyfied, and oh gosh, this is going to lead to my bigger point in a moment. But
Hmm.
what we see as love is very Disney affected.
Hmm.
But I think I would say if you went until say maybe 60 years ago, 70 years ago, before that, there was the big box of logic, rational, and the small box of emotional, like love, whatever, right? These are the possibilities into which love is possible. That's the big rational box. There's just a small logical, or the small emotional box, like, okay, we can play around in this box, like, oh, we're soulmates, we're meant to last forever, and all that stuff. But in the big box is we were able to meet each other. We're going to have to raise a family together. Once we say I do, this is forever. If we break this, it's going to affect a lot of people. Like that big rational box, like that's not sexy. There's nothing sexy about that. But if you look at like our grandparents and their parents and their parents, they understood that difference, right? Big box. This is
But that's
family
also
oriented. We're going to set things up for our family. Small box. Oh, she's beautiful, and I'm going to love her forever, right?
but that's also a product of the times, right? Because you're
Yeah.
talking like post-war, right? So I mean, that's the same as, I mean, again, to kind of bring it sort of semi-circle, I guess. This is the type of conversation that I have with my grandma often. Is when she would talk about her life, in Korea 70 years ago, 70, 80 years ago, she's like, my grandma is like zero emotions. Like she is like that. There's no box. There is no emotional box for my grandma. It's all like she like, I always characterize her as like a turtle, because not only does she look like a turtle, but she is just like super ultra tough. Like just, she's
Well,
like a bulldog and a half.
and this and look, oh my gosh, I don't want to go into a tangent, but I don't know if you've heard about the red pill. I don't know if you've followed that or not,
I
but
heard it's a Matrix reference, but every time someone talks about it, I'm not sure exactly what it
well,
is. It's like,
they're basically saying that that there has been a change in female nature because of the modern environment. Because
specifically with women.
well, because remember, if 100 years ago, before all of the progressive stuff happened, like a woman has to get married to survive, right?
Sure. Like
So
women were kind of, second
so
class citizens.
she wasn't getting her own, hasn't having her own
Couldn't
career,
own property,
all that stuff, right? So
couldn't get a job, couldn't vote, that kind of thing.
because that whole dynamic has changed, and now women can physiologically survive without men, right? They can have their own money, they can buy a house and all this stuff, they can protect themselves with a gun, they can have children without whatever. There's the dynamic has shifted, right? So
Like physiologically, they were always capable, I guess. Like
that's right.
Like
capable.
in terms of laws,
That's
like
right.
legally, they're able to access all that stuff now.
So now the push and pull is more emotional than financial or anything else. So the whole red pill thing is you have to understand that there's a female nature in how they behave, and even though things have changed, if you don't understand that part of it, then you're going to lose, because all things considered, any woman you walk up to on the street, she can make as much or more than you, because things have changed. So the reason I bring up red pill part of it is that because like society has changed in that way, like there is a way that your grandmother thought about men and survival that women now don't have, right? So this give me a good example. So your grandmother, my grandmother, the same way. She probably said, I need to marry someone and I need to commit to that person, and I need to raise a family with that person, because that is basically my only path, right? And that's my only path to, and that is the way to do it. But now, women today, they believe that they have both paths, so they're acting differently, right? So, like, I can do independent all of this, but if I falter, maybe I can look over here and maybe there's some guy that wants to rescue me. And so it's kind of changed the whole dynamic. And I would say the reason why your grandmother could be so cold is because she can see the logic dynamic of, I chose a man because I had to. Like,
well, but here's the thing. I guess two things. I'm not 100% sure on what you're talking about with the red pill, except that there's a notion of choice. Like, even when you're talking about, like, with my grandma,
for women, there's a choice.
It wasn't even like for her, and with a lot of things, it doesn't register as a choice. It was just how things were done.
That's right.
Like, this is just how life was. You know, you know, there was just a sequence of things that happened in life. It's just like, if you're if you're a woman, I guess, then you probably don't go to school, you find a dude, you get married, and then you clean up like the house. You take care of the house and cook, and you, like, that was just your path. There wasn't any aspect of choice, because even at that time, who you married was not up to you either.
Yeah.
You know? And so it was just like, I think with my grandmother, the only sort of, I think past her generation, then it got into like fortune tellers and things like that, like in terms of matchmaking, and that kind of thing. I feel like she's kind of big in the matchmaking, but that's the one thing, I guess, that I'm kind of catching there, where I feel, or where I think I can agree with you, is I feel like today we live in an age of sort of paralysis by choice, by so many choices.
That's a good point.
Where now we can choose so many things, to the point where we can even choose our own gender, right?
And I think one of the things that's hindering women in modern times is that as men, we're used to that. Like, you have a choice, you make a choice, and then there are consequences, right? So you're going to choose X, and you choose X, then there's X plus 1. You choose Y, is Y plus 1. Z plus 1. But I think for probably a second or third generation of women, I want to choose my career. I'm going to focus on my career. Okay, that's X. X plus 1 is you're 35 years old and you have no children, you have no husband prospects. Now what? And then I think for this generation of us, you're having a lot of women that are 35 and they're looking at their mom and their grandmother and their great grandmother, and they're saying, oh my God, I want both. How can I have both? And no one has mapped that out for women.
Well, we're living, I mean, we've talked about this before. I think we're living in an interesting sort of transition time for that, because you've got like a number of different forces interacting with that as well, because you've got a lot of old school societal, you know, just a lot of remnants and residue from a time where women didn't have a choice. So you have a little bit of this weird resistance of people that are just like, okay, well, you know, some people are still holding on to old traditions.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of people that have sort of more traditional views of women's roles and men's roles and whatever. And then you've got this counterculture of like extreme progressives that are just like,
Yeah.
women can do both,
Yeah.
and women need to do both.
Yeah.
And so they overcorrect, and they're just like, okay, well, I'm going to take everything that I can and try to do everything. And then there's everything in between too. But ultimately there's kind of, I feel like, what is more normal, which is something similar to the average man's experience, where you can just choose. You can just sort of choose for yourself as an individual, right? But the thing is, I feel like because we're in this transition state, there hasn't been, it's still pretty young. Like
It's very young.
this pure, yeah,
It's very young, because
right.
there's a generation of women our age that they took the fork in the road, and they're in their late 30s, early 40s, and they never married. Their prospects for children are
yeah, and we're seeing some of the side effects, right? Because
and,
just like,
and now they're at 45, and they're saying, okay, what now? And what men understand when we graduate high school, college, whatever, is, okay, now I work until I die. That's how that works. And men were okay with that. Like, that's how it works. Okay.
Well, that's the thing, right?
Because like you have women that are like, oh, whoa, I work until I'm 65. Whoa, I don't.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
That.
So we've got I feel like, again, that's another one of these interesting sort of things that hasn't. It's weird because, again, then you have like these other factors in terms of experience and technology.
Yeah.
Where on the one hand, you're seeing these women that, like you said, this first, or just this generation, maybe not the first, but like a fairly nascent generation of women that are hitting, that tried this track out. Now they're in their 40s, and they're just like, oh, wait, physiologically, I'm not similar to a man.
No.
It's more difficult for me to have children. So now, like you said, maybe the prospect of working into my 60s doesn't seem so great. I kind of want a family, but I don't have the flexibility of a dude to be able to just have a family now. And then there's all the complications of having a family late anyway. But then so they're coming across this for the first time. But then, like I said, there's this other arm of technology, which is like, okay, well, maybe we can extend that ability for you to have family later on, and who knows, right? But like, all of this is in sort of in flux.
Yeah.
So you don't have this generational thing of dudes that have been there, done that.
Well, this is where I wanted to go with this conversation. Okay, so you know that Bill and Melinda Gates, they got divorced. They're planning divorce, right? So that made me want to think about like constants, right? Like societal constants. Like what are the things that don't change no matter how much people actually do change, right? Because when I was growing up, right? I mean, let me go back. So I asked you the story about your mother. Like the story I would say about my mother is, I was first grade, and this is Decatur. So Decatur wasn't bad. It was just kind of a little bit bad. It's Decatur, right? And I was going to I forget what school, Peachcrest Elementary, right? I was first grade kid, and I came home, and I remember I was picking on this kid. His name was Derek, because we learned about oil derricks in school, and I was saying, oh, oil Derek, that's your name, oil Derek.
And so you were picking on this kid.
I was picking on him, right? Okay. And like it was like a little park in front of a little park, like where we all separated and went to our separate houses on the way back from school, or we were walking, right? And I remember he said, you know what, enough of that, I'm going to beat you behind. And I remember fighting him. And like he hit me 2-3 times, whatever. And I remember running to the house, and I was like, Mom, so and such hit me, and blah blah blah. And I remember my mom was home at the time, before she was commuting to work, because we were still young. And I remember she opened the door and she said, "Who won the fight?" And I was like, "Oh, well, he punched me. He was being whatever." She said, "To go fight him again," and she closed the door. and I was like, "What?" And like it kind of gave me a reminder, like she wanted me to be tough, right? So I went back, and he was already gone home, but I couldn't go right back home. I just had to just kind of like stay outside for 30 minutes or an hour, and then go back to the house and say, "Okay, well, I beat him, I whooped him." So I come back in the house now, right? So, but part of the reason why she was that way is because she understood that I couldn't grow up being like a female. Like if you hit a female, she says, "Oh, call the police, call the teacher." But as a man, you get hit, you can't say, "Oh, call the police, call the teacher," because another dude will keep hitting you in the head until the teacher comes. Right? It's like like you have to have some kind of agency that says, "I'm a man and I can take care of myself." It doesn't have to be physical, but it has to be some sort of something where you say, "This is what defines me as a man." And go ahead.
No, it's interesting that you bring this up, because this is somewhat related to what we talked about last week, but also part of my own sort of desire to kind of deconstruct life, where what, to me, I'm just like, what are the roles or characteristics of men, and what are the characteristics and roles of women?
And that is I think that is the existential crisis of the 2020s.
Yeah, because especially, that's what I'm saying. Especially now, because right now it's kind of like, well, I guess it's sort of, I feel like for the past maybe decade or so, there's been this sort of movement toward this idea of everyone is identically the same. And for me, I feel like that is sort of a dangerous way of thinking. Like, I feel like that's what.
Well, I don't even think it's dangerous. I just think that it's hopeful. It's not logical. It's not logical. Like there is no male maternity ward. Like men can have children. You can't do it. So to pretend that we're biologically equal. Go ahead.
Yeah, because like that's the thing. It's like, but what does that mean? So like it's interesting, because it seems like you're alluding to the fact that maybe you're looking at, I'm not sure exactly where this is coming from, but this idea of having to defend yourself, having to stand up for yourself, having to maybe physically fight, is something that is inherent or important for, specifically for like for a man, for a male's development, right? And I'm curious about that. Like I'm interested, because I'm not sure, right? Because I think there are definitely those tendencies. Again, just from my own experience, myself growing up, and my own share of like violent conflicts with people, having to deal with that kind of thing.
But I honestly believe that, I think this is capable. I think this is, look, I did not think that okay. Let me rephrase. I had one girlfriend where she had a situation where I felt like I could kill someone, right? I felt like I could do that of my own volition. Like I could kill someone because if she felt bad enough about that situation, I would rectify it. Okay, but excluding that, once I see that I have a child and a wife, then it's totally different. Totally different. Like when, especially having a daughter. Mean? Well, just like you know it now. I'm sure you feel it now, having a wife and a son, right? Where if you felt that they were in danger, your ability to go from rational Michael to I'm ready to slash somebody's throat would change very quickly if you felt that your family were in danger, right?
So you're saying that I would become more threatening. My capacity to kill someone,
Yep.
be like goes to the roof because I have something to protect. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Especially knowing that your wife is not the one that could do it, right? And certainly your son couldn't do it.
So this comes part of. So this is the other thing. This is part of my own curiosity in terms of deconstructing people's roles, because this is the other part that's. I mean, this might get into like crazy territory, but for me, it's interesting because even that I like looking at what people's capacities are, because I also evaluate how thin social contracts are, because I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but every once in a while, I don't think about murdering people, but I realize how easy it is to murder people. The only thing that keeps any of us alive is a very thin social contract, because I think about it often when I'm on an escalator. Like, I think it's not so hard if you nudge someone behind you, there's nothing that prevents you from nudging someone behind you. You could kill them. If you tumble down an escalator, you could die, right? And so it's not hard to like just do that, And so yeah, like when I think about that kind of thing, and I remember, what was it? Like people, again, like I said, I don't think about doing it, but I realize that it can happen. And I'm just like, man, you look at those kinds of circumstances around just all around, and you realize like, man, this is, what is holding the world together? It's actually like this.
What holds the world together is repercussions, and men understand repercussions, right? But this is the thing, right? Like, well, I mean, you have your socially adapted people.
Are you saying that women don't understand repercussions for things?
No, what I'm saying is that absent a gun, the average woman is not going to run up on a man and kill him, right? Like that's the thing, right? Because you have the social norms where if a man runs up on another human and he, I don't know, knives him, shoots him, or whatever, he knows that the repercussions of that is he's going to jail for the rest of his life. Like that, we as men, we understand that. You drunk drive, you hit somebody,
But you're gonna. I think it's also how people, because here's the other thing. It's basically, I feel like a lot of it's based on how people encounter violence too, because, again, I don't know about your experience or what the average person's experience is, but yeah, like I have been in those situations where, I think there was a progression. Like I as a dude, I remember getting into situations where, this kid would piss me off, like some kid would piss me off in the neighborhood, and then he would push me to the point where I'm just like, okay, now I'm going to beat your ass, because whatever. Like, I guess it was in me for, like, it was never like my first option to try to fight someone, mainly because I think back in the day, a lot of times these kids were kind of wussies, really, and they would just kind of like go to their mom. If they didn't want to fight, they would go to their mom, and their mom would come out and go, hey, you can't beat up my kid. And I'm just like, okay, well, I'm going to find a time when you're not with your mom. Then I'm going to beat your ass. But that would be the situation. And then like I would have moms like yell at me and that kind of thing. So then, like I said, that would, like you said, that's where the sort of inherent repercussions would come in, because I didn't really know what the mom would do to me until after they pushed me to the point where I'm just like, I don't care what your mom says. I'm going to find you and I'm going to take you down. But then like, so that was just sort of like, from my experience, I'm just like, okay, well, I weigh the physical, because there's also just like, you beat someone up and you have like the physical toll too, like what happens to you when you fight someone. But then when I think about the other part where I was a relatively big kid, so I was a little bit cockier when it came to like physical altercations. Whereas when I think about women, most of the time when women encounter violence, they're in a situation where they are not, you know, physically capable of like reciprocity, so that
Well,
they have to deal with other, they have to
well,
find
I
other
would
ways
say that for
of
like if women
solving those
are in the,
situations.
if women are accosting other women, then they know that it's up to them,
Well, sure,
right?
right,
But
exactly.
but when a woman is, I would say especially these days, when a woman is in a situation where they're coming against a male, they understand that there is a system that is built around them to protect them.
But that's interesting too, because yeah, like as you're
Because
saying that, before you said that, I was thinking I was the same way. Because like I remember as a kid, I would never strike a. I don't know where I learned it,
that's right.
but I would never strike a girl, or I'd never
Yeah.
thought of, or even like I never thought about fighting my friend's mom, or not my friend. I guess that kid's
But
mom.
you know what would
But
happen if you were at school and you punched a girl. Like every male teacher in the school would rush and be, hey, dude,
or
what's
just
up with
like
you? What
yeah,
are you
like
doing,
it's
dude?
just it was just again, it was a social contract. It's like hey, it's just not done, man. Or there was a social awareness that like hey, a kid, especially like a bigger kid, you're not supposed to like because our what's funny, this brings up another, I don't know if we talked about this story, but it brings up another issue where uh God, like one of my other another sort of indelible memory that I have as a kid is I was in a classroom with these two kids. This one girl
Don't say
named
names. Don't
Shonger.
say names. Don't say
Oh,
names.
okay. I won't say. Oh, I accidentally said it, but so this one girl, I don't care. Anyway, so
Okay.
there. Anyway, but so there's this one kid, this one little boy, and this one girl, and she was a bigger girl. She was, um, yeah, she was probably like she was like a big girl, but like, and I remember they were telling me that they were making fun of where I came from, and they were just like, hey man, you're not an American, and it pissed me off. And then like the girl was kind of like a bully, and so she was just like she was I think probably exploiting the fact that like whatever that I wouldn't fight her maybe, or maybe she didn't
Yeah.
care, maybe she actually did want to fight, but you know, and it was just like this whole thing like what are you gonna do about it, what are you gonna say about it, you're not, you know, I'm more American than you or whatever. And I'm just like, man, I want to beat the hell out of this girl. And like, but even though she's bigger than I am, like I would get into a lot of trouble. Like there's nothing good that comes out of this, because I was
That's
just
right.
like, this is such a screwed up situation. Like this
Well,
girl,
but look, you know what you're saying. What
yeah,
you're saying, that's something that you understood innately.
yeah,
How you were 8, 9 years old, right?
yeah. I was like, yeah, it was like
Yes.
super young, yeah.
So like that's something that you understood without. I mean, that's something you understood at 8 years old, and so it's extrapolate that out, right? Like like imagine a whole generation of girls that know that a man is not supposed to hit them, and then they just grow more and more.
Entitled or whatever.
Well, not entitled, just what's the word you want to say? Out of the box, like forget you. You ain't gonna do nothing. Like you ain't no man. Like it's like how do you deal with that, right? And that is something that's happening in certain communities. I won't say which communities. In some communities, that's something that's happening now, right? And it's kind of changing changing the dynamic, right? Especially in terms of marriage and intimate relationships, right?
Well, I think yeah, like because I think what's happening is that I think this is what happens with most things, frankly, is that most people like to look at things isolated, like
Yes.
isolated traits
Yes.
or isolated aspects. So, like for example, I want to have uh, whatever, like I want to join this club. You know, who knows, right? I'm a girl and I want to join a club that's traditionally only boys only, or whatever. And if you only isolate that one aspect, then sure, right? That seems unfair, right? But I think what a lot of people discount is so many of these things are sort of systemic. And there are a lot of individual threads that are tied together to these individual sort of ideas. So you can't, for example, let's just, you know, let's just close all the prisons, for example. Let's just
Well,
like,
but
let's,
and look,
or defund the police,
and
or,
I think
let's
I
stop
think that's
spending on
one of the
military.
I think that's one of the things about America that scares me the most. It,
Hmm.
it really makes me worry about like America 20 years from now, because like there is a need to compromise, and I'm a liberal. I don't apologize for that. Like, I think there should be universal health care. I think there should be universal child care. I think that college should not be privatized. I think all of that stuff. I get all that, right?
Sure.
But sometimes I go on the New York Times tread, right? And I see like people are they're talking about like the moratorium for the the rent the rent moratorium, right? Where people don't have to pay rent. And it's been what, 6, 8 months?
Hmm.
And people are saying like they shouldn't lift it. It's like someone owns that property. They got to pay the bank for that property. Like there are consequences to all of this. Like this is not like play stuff. This is real life here. Someone paid to own the property that you're renting. If you
Right.
don't pay that person for that property, they don't get their money to pay to the bank, and the bank doesn't have the money to survive. So to say that people above you are people that have more money than you are all inherently evil, that doesn't fit. Like,
Well, there's a domino effect. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
of course. And so
I,
that
because the
whole
thing,
idea
yeah.
of like these guys over here are 100%. Good example. Biden pulled all the troops out of Afghanistan, last week, right?
Hmm.
You saw what happened yesterday, right?
No, what happened?
Oh, there was an attack on I think a hospital or a school, and like 30 or 40 children died. It's like it's not that simple. It's like, oh, Trump is 100% right and Biden is 100% wrong. It's not that simple. There's nuance.
I mean,
and
yeah.
and
And
we're
so,
not America's not good at that anymore. And
but
that worries me. Go ahead.
that's what I guess, like, you know, that's what I think is interesting in terms of, I feel like that theme is very recurrent in terms of our conversations. And I'm curious, like, within the context of men and women, for example, I'm curious, like, what those roles, like, in your opinion, it seems like you have a pretty firm belief about like what men what men should be doing and what men are versus what women should be doing and what women are.
But it it only seems that way because I don't have a woman now.
Okay.
And the reason and look, a lot of that has to do with, simply put, the capability of the woman that you're with.
Hmm.
Because look, to be honest with you, I think that the new like paradigm is woman goes to college, she learns a skill, she graduates college, maybe she gets some work experience, she meets a man that she can build something with, she takes 3 or 4 years off, has 2 or 3 children, and then once the children are of childcare age, she starts incorporating herself back into the workforce or a business. I think that's the new paradigm, right?
Okay. So, well, let me ask you this. Okay, let me ask you this, because this is something that happened. So, this is something that I thought was interesting that happened to me while I was living in Japan. So, I was working, I was working at a language school, and I met this woman, one of my students. She was, I think, like a mid-level executive. She was probably like around my age. She was like probably mid-20s at the time, and she had a very promising career. And you know, she told me that she was getting married, and I was really excited, like, oh, that's great. And then she told me that after she got married, I don't know how common this is, but after she got married, she would have to step down from her job and go to like wife college, where she would learn how to cook and clean and
Yeah,
do
see,
these things.
yeah.
And I was just like, wait, this is a thing? Like first I didn't know this was a thing. And she
Well,
was just like,
but look, and this is one of the reasons why I think that this this one of the reasons why I think that this whole bug, what's the best way to say it? This whole coronavirus thing is going to change society is because, look, simply put, whatever company she was working for before she got pregnant and all that stuff, that company understood her value. They knew that she had value. So if a company wants to survive, they can say, hey, listen, you go home, you stay home with that child. This is what we're going to do. We're going to send you a couple of emails a day, a couple of emails a month, a couple of emails a week. You do your little magic and you reply to the emails when you can. We're going to keep paying you because you're that important. But here, and it's one of the things that probably is slowing down companies here is they think, oh, you got to be in the workplace, in a cubicle to do the job. And it's kind of holding them back. But if some forward-thinking people are just saying like, hey, listen, this person she's on top of it. She is one of the best people we have. We're going to keep her on the payroll. We might do some things here and there, but you raise your children get 2 or 3 years old and they're going to childcare. We're going to keep paying you. And then when you're good, we're going to have you come into the office when you can, because we need your expertise. And you keep her engaged, those companies are going to win in the future. Though, I mean, simply put, like they're going to win because those really talented people, you don't stop being talented because you have a child.
Yeah, so, no, for sure. But like, but I think there are like 5 different things that I think are interesting about that scenario. Is that number one, I love that school exists. Like whatever that, I don't know what it's called in Japan, I guess, but I just love that there's this sort of finishing school for potential brides or potential married people. I don't know if it's open for men as well, but it's just like, it'll just teach you sort of basic school or basic homemaking skills, which I think is extraordinary. And I had like hundreds of questions in terms, well, not hundreds, but just like, do you have to pay for this? Is this government sponsored? Is it something that you, whatever? But the interesting thing was, at that time, I remember thinking about that gal and just thinking like, there was sort of like a tinge of sort of disappointment where I was just like, oh, she was like kind of like I said, like a mid-level manager or whatever. She had like a promising career, but she had the impression that I got at the time was that it was done. It's over now. Like now, and I think the other interesting aspect of it was, I think she was happy about that. I don't think she really wanted to work. Like it was kind of like that was her sort of insurance policy.
And look, and this is one thing I think is going to happen in Japan, and it might happen in America. Look, there's plenty of business, plenty of like standard business for men to go in, work 80 hours a week. There's plenty of that. I think that the average woman, especially after she starts having children, she would like to raise her children and start her own business. I'm not saying like the business where you have to be available 89, 90 hours a week. I'm talking about build a web business, build something that you can manage while your children are at school, because America, we do this. But this is relatively new to Asia, right? The idea that you start a business and you have to be at that business 120 hours a week, like that's a very Asian ideal, because you can hire. Go ahead.
So, but that it's interesting. So that goes into a whole other direction. But but I feel like this is another thing that is a little bit more complicated too, because when you look at systemically, again, in the States, you've got a lot of systems that support small business, individual entrepreneurship, and that kind of thing. you do not have, well, I don't know about Japan. You do not have that in Korea though. Like basically, if you are not part of a conglomerate, there's a this idea of like people buying from other people and
Yeah.
small building like your own sort of small business. It's a very new concept in Korea.
Yeah.
So like it's hard for even that aspect of just like doing something on your own. Like the system isn't there yet that makes it sort of accessible to everyone. Like that's not like something that everyone immediately thinks of. Like if you maybe have some contact with the West or with with like other places, maybe you're thinking in that direction.
Well, but
But
I
there
get,
isn't a lot of government support and not a lot of public support
well,
for that kind of thing.
and this is what separates, like, this is what separates the normal companies from the explosive growth companies, right?
Sure.
Because like an explosive growth company, I mean, I would say Etsy is a good example. Etsy, right?
Mm.
Like someone sat in their house and they said, you know what, we're going to take all of these people that are building, creating all of this sewing stuff and their own things that they're creating at their houses. We're going to create a special platform where they
Marketplace,
can
yeah.
sell it only here, right?
Yeah.
And like if someone has that foresight, and it could be a woman, it could be anyone, has the foresight to say, oh, well, these women are raising children, but in their spare time, they're sewing handbags. They're
Yeah.
building, like, they're quoting or quilting quilts or something. And people go online and say, oh my God, that's what I want. I want to pay X number of dollars for that. Like,
Yeah.
it's the same as any other business. It's just you have to open your mind to the other possibilities, right? And
Yeah.
and that's why I think that traditional businesses could lose, or even are losing, right?
No, for sure.
Look at the landscape now with coronavirus, and you can't go to the mall, you can't go to the restaurants and like you normally would. If there are some forward thinking people, they would say, well, what if I just did A, B, or C? And it doesn't have to be a man to do that, right?
No,
That's
for
one of
me.
the reasons why I think that this new landscape is changing things, right? Because
Well, yeah, because like the other part of it, the other part of it that I wanted to talk about actually is what what is the what is the family dynamic, or what is, I hesitate to use the term ideal because I don't want to sort of whatever make any judgment in terms of what's better or worse, but the thing is, like, so for example, I have another friend, and he and his wife both work, and they just had their first kid. And I remember talking to him, and I was like, "Hey, man, like, how do you like being a father?" And he's like, "I don't know, like the nanny and my in-laws basically spend most of the time with the kid." And I'm just like, in the back of my head, I'm just like that sucks. Like, why bother having a kid, man? If you're not going to see your kid, you're not going to, like, it's great that you've got the help. Like the dad in me is just like, man, that's awesome that you have so much support. You have a nanny, you got the in-laws, you've got some extra hands. But then the more that I talk to him, I'm just like, wait, how much contact do you actually have with your
yeah,
kid?
yeah,
Like
that
that's,
matters.
and I don't want to make any judgment on him because who knows, right? But like, but there's a part of me that's just like, okay, what's the consequence of, like, in my head I want to say there's huge consequence, like you're giving up, like I'm so much better because I'm gonna have this awesome connection with my son, and you're just gonna be strangers with your kid, just to kind of make myself feel better. But like I feel like there's something legitimate there, because I'm just like, if you're someone, and I have a number of friends that have like nannies or like helpers that spend probably more time than the actual parents with either an individual or both parents with the kids. And there's a part of me that's just like, it's great that, you know, you're doing something amazing for society, or doing work that's fulfilling for you or whatever. And then you also have a kid too. You're kind of having it all. But there's something to me a little bit like, I don't know, like I don't want someone else raising my kid for me.
No, no, no.
But that's just maybe my choice or my opinion or whatever. But uh and I'm not changing the world with the work that I'm doing, I guess. But that's the thing. It's just like, I'm curious within that context, like what is the optimal, like for me, I like the idea, kind of what you're talking about. Like, I would love for my wife to have like this side hustle or whatever, but she takes care of the
Yeah.
family. I get to spend as much. I spend like a lot of time every day with my kid as well, and just sort of, you know, this is sort of my equilibrium, because especially like now as a sort of an older father of a younger child, I'm sort of weirdly in retirement mode now, where I'm
Well,
not looking to expand my career. I'm not looking to be like a crazy whatever. Like
well,
all I'm doing is trying to live my life and and just sort of optimize that time and
well,
pay my bills basically.
and this is one of the things that I think a lot of super ambitious people miss is that,
Mm,
and I see it with my daughter because my daughter is 9.
mm,
She's going to be 10 this year. Like, I mean, you have basically until 12, 12 maybe, to establish that relationship with that child. And I'm
mm.
not saying that you have to spend all the time with the child, but you have to spend some quality time with the child. Because after 12, 13, they're basically on autopilot. And if they haven't learned it yet, they're not going to learn it. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
if
it's
you have
interesting.
a child and they're 1 or 2, you have maybe 2 or 3 years to say, okay, I'm going to get my thing together, and then I'm going to connect with the child. And if you don't start connecting with that child when they're 4, 5, you're missing your opportunity because they're going to stop listening to you. So
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because again, like I feel like this is another recurring theme where I wish there were more competent parents that are much older than I am, that I could lean on for
yeah,
like good advice. And the reason I say I preface it with competent is because, you know, my parents were terrible. Like, and I feel like it's hard for me in general to find parents that I think are like, I think that the number of parents that I've met that I've respected, I could count on one hand. I think, like parents, not even like pairs of parents, like literal like number of parents. I think I've met maybe 5 in my life, and and uh, and that's the thing. It's sort of like it's one of the reasons why like I've had to sort of deconstruct all this stuff in my own mind in terms of how to behave as a parent, and why it feels like I'm at square one with everything, because I've gotten a lot of what not to do. Right? I've seen gotten a lot of examples of what not to do. But in terms of like what are some best practices, I would love, when we talked about community before, this idea, like I would love to be able to like lean on like someone who's a grandparent now who could be like,
well,
hey, you know what?
look, that's something that the Asian community in America, well, from my perception of it, the Asian community in America has gotten right, is that you have multi-generational families living in the same home.
Mm.
So you can have a father, or you can even have a mother and a father, both.
Yeah, but they could be passing along like bad
Yeah.
habits. Like that's the thing. It's like
Well, they could.
like I said, no one in my family, my whole family is full of morons in terms of family, like bringing up family. They are the ideal dysfunction machine. This is a dysfunction factory. My family is a dysfunction factory, right? So it doesn't. I
Fair
feel like
enough.
yes, sure. Like if you again, I just could be unlucky, and I've just not been able to encounter enough competent parents and grandparents in my life. But the thing is, maybe I'm hoping I missed out. But that's the thing. Like for me, uh, yeah, like that's for me
Well,
just trying to
but
figure that stuff out
but
because
but
well,
again, go ahead.
well, the reason I bring it up is because I know how hard it is to create family with my sibling. So, for example, my sister and I had a really weird relationship where, like, we sort of we grew up together, and then we grew apart. We came back together, kind of like strangers, like later in life, and then tried to reestablish our relationship as brother and sister. We kind of became friends again, and then and then she killed herself, and so we didn't really have a chance to sort of really grow together as a family, even though I wanted to. And so for me, I understand a lot of like the nuance between like what does it mean to feel like you're connected. Like we were, by blood. We were connected by blood. But then I realized, no, you can strip that apart. You can be related
Well,
by blood and be strangers. You can be related by blood and become strangers.
yeah.
You can be related by blood and then still just be sort of, friendly. You can be friends, but not quite siblings again. Like that whole dynamic in between the two of us, I sort of kind of grew to appreciate.
Yeah.
But like that's what I want to ask an older person, where it's just like, is that true for parents as well? Is that same dynamic true for like a father and son, where, kind of like we alluded to before, I didn't birth him, but like, it's like that thing. And that's what concerns me the most. And that's what I'm hoping, you're saying 12-year window. I don't know, like I'm looking at my friend and I'm just like, you're going to miss out. Whatever it is, you're going to miss out because you've got this nanny and you've got in-laws that are kind of taking him off your hands. And I feel like, I feel like, does it matter? I don't know if it matters or not. Like maybe the kid's still going to want to hold my hand, regardless of whether I see him 4 hours a day or 30 minutes a day or 10 hours a day. I don't know. Like that's the thing that I'm trying to, not that there's like a concrete number, but that's what I'm trying to suss out, where I'm just like, what's the balance? And at what point am I smothering? At one point am I being, tough
Well,
love
but
and that kind of thing?
but I think, but again, I think kids more than anything, they need structure, right? They need boundaries, right? So
Sure.
when a child knows this is my box, they can play around in that box and they're comfortable in it. But I think one of the real true benefits of family is ritual. Like families create rituals. And of course it could be 5 generations away, it could be 3 generations away, it could be you and your wife. You can create your own ritual. Those rituals are going to become a part of that child's life.
Yeah.
So like I remember as a child growing up and just I don't know what kind of drama was going on between my father and my mom and his father and his mother and all that stuff. But I do remember Thanksgiving, Christmas. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. We're going to grandma's house. Yeah, yeah, we're going to grandpa's house. We're going to Grandma Narina's house. We're going to Grandma Gay's house. And like that structure became something that reminded me, oh yeah, Thanksgiving is important. Christmas matters. New Year's Day is a special day, right? Like, so that structure reminds me like, okay, well, I don't know what kind of structure I'm going to have in Japan with my daughter, but spring break, summer holiday, Christmas, Easter, these days are special, and I'm going to have to teach her that these days are different than the other days. How different, how we celebrate it, that I mean that depends on each family. But being able to like have like your own family rituals, I think that is the most important part of family. This is
Yeah, I
what,
think,
because
yeah,
like
for
remember
sure.
like the things that I'm looking at you, you're here. The things that you do for Christmas, Thanksgiving, I don't know the Korean holidays, but I promise you, your son is going to be replicating all of that. Like, hey, listen, chick is he's going to meet a girl, and she's like, oh yeah, let's go to Guam on Christmas. She'd be like, hey, check this out, check this out. Well, the way I grew up, we don't do that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We could do that some other day, but Christmas, we chilling at here, and we're gonna go see Papa and Mama. That's what we're doing. Got a problem? And she's like, no, Daddy. And then they're gonna come to your house and bring your grandkids to your house, right? That's the family ritual, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Yeah. Like for me, yeah, it kind of goes back to that idea. Like it's interesting because even in those broader contexts, like I like when we look at family, that to me makes more sense. But when it boils down to parenthood and mom versus pa, like that's the stuff that like it's interesting because I feel like you have, like I said, it seems like you have very strong feelings and uh, very clear feelings about those roles. And I'm curious, like what I would love for you to, because like I feel like you've alluded to it a lot. I'm curious, like if you could break it down. Can you break down what
but this is the difference, right? This is the singular difference. My father, he grew up with his mom and his father.
Mm.
My mother did not. She grew up with only her mother, right?
Okay.
So that dynamic there's a dynamic there, right? But me, I grew up with my father and my mother. So on Thanksgiving, I'm going to see my mom's side of the family. On Christmas, I'm going to see my dad's side of the family, or vice versa, right? So you see that balance, and there's like a kind of thing there where like both sides of the family are important, and we got to see both sides. And as a child, you understand like, okay, there's something seriously important about this Christmas, Thanksgiving-ish. So even now, like now I'm living separate from my wife, but when Christmas or Thanksgiving comes, like my little girl, she understands like this is not just normal day where we go to McDonald's and get some Big Macs and sit down and watch Christmas movies. No, dad cooks. Like dad's gonna cook for Christmas. He's gonna cook for Thanksgiving. He's gonna cook for New Year's. And she might not understand why, but she understands that this day is special. And that's something that your son is going to understand with your rituals, right? And that's why I think family rituals matter so much, is because this is not April Fool's Day. This is not like at August 22nd. This is Christmas. This is Thanksgiving. This is New Year's Day.
But see, I think that's interesting. And again, I don't know. I'm still sort of trying to figure out all the different parts here. But like, even what you're saying in terms of Christmas is a time where dad cooks, I think is very interesting because maybe cooking is not part of like the gender role, like, you know, breakdown that you were talking about before. So I think that's interesting because, so where I'm coming from here, I mean, in terms for me, this is what I think the interesting dynamic I think I have with my wife is that when I met my wife, she was, you know, I met my wife when we were both older. So we met when we were in our 40s, right? And she was working, you know, in a job that she didn't really like. And she was more or less resigned to kind of just be living that life for the rest of her life. It's like, you know, in her 40s, she was not expecting to just like, you know, any life changes at that point. So after we got married, the interesting thing is, like, in terms of gender roles or marital roles or who knows, is she did not want to work anymore because she didn't really enjoy the job that she had. She didn't really know how to cook or clean or do anything like sort of domestic because she was sort of used to living at home and she had her own money and she was just sort of like, she just sort of lived a sort of like a single person's life, more or less. She didn't really, I guess she wasn't really planning or thinking about like, I guess she had thought, I think that that idea was stunted, that at some point when she got married, she would start doing those things. But because she didn't get married for, that length of time, it never happened or whatever. And so it got to the point where it was interesting that like after we got married, uh, it was I wasn't really sure what she wanted to do. Like I was like, I just kind of did my thing. I cooked, I cleaned, I was working, I did, like I sort of put all this stuff together and uh and that was just kind of, there was a part of me that was just sort of, my perception of like of a partner at that time was like, okay, so are you gonna work? Are you gonna do something? And she was just like, no. I'm like, okay. Are you gonna like what are you gonna cook and stuff? Are you gonna do, well, I didn't actually ask her if she was gonna cook, but she was saying like she was gonna cook. And I was like, actually, I'm a better cook than you. And
No, you shouldn't say that.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. But in my head, I'm just like, actually, I cook better than you do, and I sort of put things, I organize and clean things a little bit better. And I'm just like, well, am I gonna wait for you to like to become better at these things? Should I invest in ways for you to get better at these things? And uh it was just kind of like, that was sort of like dynamic, the interesting dynamic early on. And we had this conversation, and she's just like, I had never really given it any thought. And I was just like, because I asked her, I was like, well, what is your role going to be? And like, frankly speaking, she was kind of okay of just like, I'm just gonna stay home, And I'm just like, that's really nice for the person that's not making any money and
Well,
not really.
but this and this is where I I implore you to change your strategy. Okay.
Okay.
This is where I implore you to change your strategy.
Well,
because
my approach has been whatever, but so I'm curious what your advice.
So first of all, you know that your wife has a certain set of resident skills, right? Like whatever those skills are, I'm not sure what she did before she married you, but she has skills, right?
Sure.
So the one thing you can do is employ those skills into your business or businesses or your daily life, whatever those might be, right? That's one. And the second thing is, look, you understand maybe you might be a better cook or whatever, but you still have to use the time. So you could shift some of the time that you don't have over to her and say, babe, I really appreciate you cooking. And, or I mean, it depends on how you want to do it. You could be like, babe, I need you to cook, and, and you cook and I'm going to do XYZ for you. Or I mean, whatever, how your dynamic is. You might be asking like, baby, please, or you might like, hey, I'm the man, you need to do your thing. Whatever, however that dynamic works, right? But like, I mean, if you have a salt pepper shaker and you have some spicy, whatever she can cook, and be like, hey, babe, I appreciate you cooking, or damn right you cook. And then you save that time, right? Because like you have a helpmeet, you have someone that's helping, right? So like you can empower her to help you, and if you do it correctly, you can empower her to be like your first hand to grow your business.
Well, like, so that's the thing. So like, this is where it kind of gets interesting in terms of like roles, right? An adjustment in terms of mentality, because what you're describing to me is an immediate assignment of someone as subordinate. Like what you're describing, that methodology of what you're talking about is an immediate sort of switch off to like, okay, you are a subordinate, so I need to find a way to delegate certain responsibilities.
I wouldn't say that. That's a bit of a leap. I would say that. And have you ever coached the basketball team? Have you ever coached the sports team?
I've never had that experience.
Okay, so like when you coach a sports team, like everyone has their roles, right? There, you have your scorers, you have your delegators, you have people that set picks, you have people that rebound, box out. You have, and all the roles are different roles, and they're not all as glamorous as each other, right? But one of the things about being a coach is you explain to everyone that, hey guys, we're a team. I sacrifice, you guys sacrifice. We're going to make this work for the greater good. Like, if you have that kind of
You
attitude,
are the coach. You're the coach. You are
okay,
clearly.
okay.
You're clearly. They are clearly your subordinates.
But this is the thing. As even as a coach, right? Even as a coach, there were some days. You know about the rainy season here. You know the rainy season is like here, right?
Mm.
So like you have rainy season, which is like late May, June, and like you're telling kids, run, 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 get ready for the game, get ready, run, run, run. And like there's some days where they're just like, you know what, I don't feel like doing it. Like, why are we running? Like, we're good enough, we're good. And some days as a coach, you got to take your jacket off, you got to take your pants off and say, hey, we're running together. Come on, let's go. Running together. And like you go out there, you split and run, and you're coughing and wheezing and everything. And like sometimes that's what it takes to like all the kids know, like, hey, listen, this is important. It's so important that I'm willing to do this much to show you. And like, look, and that's leadership, right? Leadership is not like do it, do it, do it. Leadership is let's do it together, right? And like, look, I know that you have a very intelligent wife. I'm sure that she really appreciate it. Like, hey, I want you to do X, Y, and Z. I want to take care of our boy while you do whatever you got to do, and we're going to switch off later. But it's that important to me, right? And and I think that's one of the things that has changed in the new dynamic, right? Is that as a go ahead.
Well, I was going to say is what I think is interesting is that, you know, it's funny that when I mentioned the term subordinate, you kind of instantly got defensive, and you're just like, no. It's like a leadership, it's a partnership, or it's still, you know, it's kind of like a role driven. But I think there are some people, I think my wife is included.
I agree with that. I agree with what you're about to say. You're right.
That want that role.
Yep.
They want the subordinate role. They don't want to be a partner. They don't want to be in charge, and they would prefer to be, you know, the helper, the support, or, you know, just like the side.
Or just allow the responsibility to fall on someone else.
Yeah, and so, and not even like, again, what's interesting is that, like, for me, even like the dynamic of husband and wife that I was more sort of accustomed to from growing up in the States, like she doesn't want like that. She doesn't want it. Like, she's like,
you know what's so funny about that, Mike?
We've had that conversation, yeah.
You know what's so funny about that, Mike?
Hmm.
I don't think that most women want that, even in America. I don't think most women want it. I really don't. I really don't. You walk up to the average American woman and say, you don't need a man, depend on yourself, work to 65. You put those three things on the table to the average American woman, white, black, whatever. Don't depend on anyone else. Take care of yourself until you're 65, and it's all about your own decisions. The average woman, I would imagine, would say, I don't want that.
Well, I don't know. I think I would push back a little bit in that. Like, I said
average.
Yeah, but I feel like, but the thing is, I feel like my wife's attitude is a bit extraordinary also, because for her, I feel like she shies away from responsibility in general. Whereas I feel like the average person, especially in the States, they want to take on. Average
you don't
person?
Think so? Average man, got to distinguish.
I feel like the average person, maybe not. But in my perception, I feel like the average person, they like they like to make decisions, and they like to like
Yes, but
they
I think the average person likes to make decisions. I do not believe the average person likes to live with the consequences of their decisions.
sure. But what I'm saying is, my wife doesn't even want that. Doesn't even like she is like one of those characters that's just like, again, from what I know, I could be totally reading her wrong as well. I accept that possibility. But like she tends to be like someone that doesn't like making choices. She's just like
Well,
she doesn't really know.
I would say to you in your situation that you should take full advantage of your situation because, well, you know what, I let me rewind that back because I don't understand the dynamic of Korea and how that's working.
Mm.
But I would definitely say that even in Japan, like there are a lot of women that they kind of want the independence, but they don't necessarily understand what's coming with it. So when when they're 32 years old and they're walking a dog in a park, they want a guy to say, you know what, I want you and your dog, and we're going to start a family. As opposed to them saying, I got my dog, I'm good. Like that's the difference I think between the East and the West right now is that there are women in the West who have their dog in the park and they're walking around and saying, I'm good. And they want a man to say, I want to take you in, but the dynamic in America is so jacked up. The man's like, oh well, she looks independent. She looks like she's got everything figured out. So I just go find somebody else. And she goes 32, 35, 40, 45. She's got two dogs and no man, right?
I think the issue, I think the biggest issue in the States in that regard, and it may be across the board, is just communication. Is that like being able,
Communication is part, but is partly expectations too, because remember now, you have you have in Asia, you have women that are making 25, 30, 35, 40,000 saying, I'm going to give up my career for a guy that's making 50 or 60,000, right? Or whatever.
yeah.
But in America, you're having women that are making 70,000, 80,000 saying, I want someone that's making twice what I'm making. So I want someone that's making 150,000. I'm going to be a traditional wife. And you have someone that's making 150,000 saying, maybe I should just get someone who's traditional that didn't get a college degree. Like, what's the difference between you and the other woman, right? So that's where a lot of women are losing is that they're doing all this college stuff and
It's
then
interesting.
they're making a large amount of money and they don't want the guy that's making 60,000. They're looking past that guy. Go ahead.
But even what you're talking about is very interesting because I feel like there's also an added dimension of, again, sort of a different type of peer-to-peer sort of communication. Because what's interesting is I feel like there's also that dynamic of when I was younger, I I think I was very much I was kind of enamored with innocent girls. Like I liked uh I kind of liked
Innocent
uh
appearing.
just yeah, just like naive, like something about naivety.
Yeah.
Like I really like this, especially like when I was in uh my early 20s. Like so you know, I was sort of, I don't know. I think I was just very insecure. But basically, the idea was I was enamored with sort of innocent gals, and so I started dating, like especially when I went to China. That's kind of, it was sort of like my wheelhouse because most of the gals that I met out there, their experience was somewhat limited, especially comparatively to myself, and so they had that air of like, I don't know. I seemed much more impressive because like they had not seen a lot of stuff. So like, so I'm just like, oh, cool. But what I quickly, you know, grew to realize is that after that initial sort of like, you know, after a short time of feeling impressive, I realized like, man, I don't really have a lot to talk about with this gal. There isn't a lot of depth to our conversations.
Yeah.
And you know what I would love to do is talk about Star Wars, and not only talk about Star Wars. I want to get deep into Star Wars. Like I don't want to hear about like whatever. And I feel like that could be, I say all this to kind of talk about like that could be the appeal of the, the six-figure salary dude looking for maybe a six-figure salary gal that maybe wants to be a
Well,
housewife but used to be a champion of industry.
And this is where I'll push back on that. And
Hmm.
and I can't talk to you too much longer because I got work tomorrow. But
yeah,
this is one of the reasons why I think our podcast is so important. And I think it's important not for the greater good. I'm talking about for us in general, right?
Hmm.
Like the two of us. Like the idea of compartmentalizing, right?
Hmm.
Like if I had a girlfriend, which I don't have, whatever, by design, by choice, whatever. If I had a girlfriend, like I would probably mention her, like, hey, yeah, I like Star Wars. She'd be like, oh, you like Star Wars? Yeah, okay, cool, boom. If she wasn't into Star Wars, then okay, I don't talk about Star Wars to her. I talk about Star Wars to my friends, right? And like that's the thing. I think that's the difference. That's one of the romantic ideal about, oh, your mate has to be your soulmate. That's not true. It's not correct. Like you have the person that's your romantic interest, the person that's raising your children, then you have your job, then you have your interest over here, and to be able to go back and forth between the 3 or 4,
right.
whatever.
Yo.
Like that really, I think that's really important. And not only important, but I think that is something that if you go back generations before us, not only did men do it, they did it unapologetically.
But this
hey,
is
babe,
exactly.
I'm going fishing today, so I'll be back at 5 o'clock.
But this is exactly what I'm talking about, right? Like in terms of, because like what's interesting is the funny thing is, full circle, incidentally, my wife is not interested in Star Wars, for example. Like we have, like again, we have that sort of dynamic where it's like, sure. Like so I as an individual, I've moved past that whole aspect of what I'm talking about. But what I'm saying is going back to this idea of of other types of relationships and what the roles are, or what the key points are, because you know and figuring out what those things are, because some people, I don't know what it means. For example, I don't know what works for everyone, but like maybe what works for some people is like maybe you need a peer, maybe you want a partner, maybe you want someone to bounce ideas off
I
of,
wouldn't even say a peer. You need your own life, right?
Sure, as an individual,
your own life outside of your partner. Because I would say that that's probably something that has had a detrimental effect on the Western idea of love, is the idea of the soulmate, that the person that's going to solve your life. Like, I don't think that's how it works. Like, you find someone that's compatible with you, but you still have your own life over here, right?
Well, here's the thing. Sorry to interrupt, but like, I don't know if we talked about this or not, but like one of the illustrations that I've always, the enduring sort of illustration I have of a functional relationship is two people running next to each other. So like, they're not tethered together.
Yeah.
They're just running, and they're in proximity because they are sort of independently kind of going. So like, I feel like, that to me is like the illustration of what the ideal relationship is, because when you get into situations where sometimes person A is ahead, sometimes person B is ahead, but you're always kind of nearby and you can kind of maintain pace, because I feel like the relationships that get into trouble are when the people are kind of trying to hold on to each other. And the times when, like you said, like if they like, okay, we got to do everything together. and we got to do whatever. And then like, you know, when you try to run like that, then it's like nobody's happy. Then you're just like, you feel stuck, and it's not an enjoyable experience, you know. And yeah, like, and you're just, and then just keeps, it's continuous friction regardless, you know. And or even if you're tethered together in any capacity, there's always going to be some sort of weird tension.
Yeah.
And so ideally, you don't want to have those kinds of restrictions on your partner. You want to find someone that you can run with, you know.
Well, and
and you can,
and I would add an extra dimension to that. I would say that as a man, as a male, like you're running next to your partner, you should be attracting your partner as opposed to pulling your partner. Like,
okay, sure.
like this is where I'm going. You can come with me if you want to. If you don't want to go and you want to go somewhere else, that's your choice. But me, I'm headed in this direction. If you want to come with me, we're going to go together. Like I think almost, I'm not saying the man has to be the direction, but I would say that for the great majority of women, they want the man to be the direction. And this is where America is getting it all kind of crossed up, is that we're equal, we got to do the same. And then a lot of women are just saying, okay, well, where are we going? What's the direction? And look, men aren't built that way. Like a woman is not going to walk up to you and say, I want to marry you, let's do this, let's follow my life plan. That's not how it works. Like,
so what is it inherent in men? What is it inherent in men that warrants that role?
well, I would say that what happens to men is men have to face consequences. I think it's that simple. Like men have to face consequences. You fail, you fucked up, dude. What's wrong with you?
Just by virtue of the society
Just by
history in the society that's
just
been
by
built.
virtue, yes. So I want to be a singer. Okay, you go to Hollywood, you move to Hollywood, you're 26 years old, you never get it right. Okay, you're 27-year-old, you didn't find out how to be a singer, so what now? Because remember, like, there's an option that women have if they choose that same path, right? Like, I'm going to go to Hollywood and I'm going to be an actress. Oh, it doesn't work out? Well, I'm just going to find the hottest guy that I can find. I don't know, get pregnant by him or turn him, make him want to marry me, and boom, I'm married and I follow his path. But men we have to create our own paths. And I think one of the attractive things about men is, especially for women that are smart enough to recognize it. This dude has a plan. Let me get with him. This dude is headed somewhere. Let me get with him. And I think one of the things that has happened in the West is that women have so prioritized what appears cool and awesome now, where, oh, he's hot, he's smoking hot, he has a good looking whatever, I'm going to chase after him. I think that a lot of women are chasing that immediate gratification, and then when they're in their 30s or the mid 30s or later, they're saying, okay, well, where's my guy at? And what they don't understand is that they already met their guy, they just didn't give him any attention. And that's what I think is one of the differences between the East and the West, is that there's still a value on men that are not successful yet who have vision.
But it's interesting because I know it's late and we don't want to get into another whole thing, but like, I'm curious because I feel like a lot of what you're talking about is very much tied to this idea of success. And I feel like success, you've mentioned a couple times, you've thrown out like a 6-figure salary. It's kind of like considered success.
Well,
right?
and the idea of success is very different from the East and the West. It's really different.
But that's what's interesting, right? And I'm curious, like, I guess maybe next time we could talk about what success means, perhaps, because I feel like that's also part of something that because there's a balance between what needs to be remedied and what needs to be sort of accepted, right? Because what you're saying here is like, okay, look, we need to sort of accept that the male role is sort of locked in terms of being the leadership role because history and society and culture are all built around like, look, the son's got to be the
Well, I would say
breadwinner.
that because that is what is going to solidify the female interest.
Right. But the thing is, like what you're talking about, I'm assuming is that we're not going to be able to reverse all of these cultural, all these cultural norms instantly, right?
Not in
So
three
like,
generations. No.
right. So like, it's this idea that like, look, because traditionally, across the board in most cultures on the globe, like the males, the boys are sort of tasked to being the breadwinners, and then women, it's an option at this stage because of that. And like you said, there is a mentality for a lot of people where it's like for a lot of women where it's like, okay, if my pursuits fail, then yeah, I can just marry a dude that has something, and I can just become a part of that person's family, right, or that person's life. And then the other part of it is this idea, something that could be remedied. On the other hand, something that could be remedied is seeking out partnership based on money in general, because this idea of success. Because I think that's interesting, because even speaking to myself, especially like looking at myself as an illustration, is I've given up uh, my individual pursuit of wealth so that I can have a balanced family life, you know? And so even though there are a lot of ways, because this is a scenario that I play out a lot in my head, is that I know I could make a lot more money if I were A, like on my own, and B, just doing whatever I wanted to do. But I also know that I was living that life, like a decade ago, and I wasn't all that happy. I'm like much happier now. Like even though like I have my struggles with money and I have my struggles with stresses and things with family life, like
Well,
across the board,
but
I'm
but
so much happier.
but this is one of the things that I think we as modern people don't necessarily understand, is that I think even now you might feel like it's not the case, but you're in a better position to absorb that go chase it mentality, because you know that you have something to come home to. Like
Mm.
you could say, you know what, babe, I I'm going to ramp it up because I care about you and the child, and I want to. And like, shoot, you might be surprised. You'd be like, you know what? Then this drop another puppy. Like,
But that's the struggle, right? That's the biggest struggle. Like what's cool is that sort of the exquisite struggle
yeah,
of my current life is that there is that one side of me, absolutely, that's like, I need to create the best life possible for like this family that I love, but I also want to spend more time with this family that I love. And so it's like, okay, like how do I do this? How do I balance this?
oh, dude,
You know?
that is it. That is probably a question that is thousands of years old, isn't it?
Yeah. And so like for me, it's just like that's why it's interesting. That is sort of like the engine that sort of drives my day-to-day life. Like that's why I feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. Like I don't think I need to like because that's what I think is interesting. Because when I look at so the interesting sort of weird thing is I have more money now than I ever thought I was going to earn in my life, frankly, weirdly, but I still feel like I'm poor. And I think that's partly because I grew up poor, but I'm not a rich person by any means. But like I said, I do have more money than I ever thought I was going to earn in my life. And and the thing is, it's like because I feel poor and because there's always more things that can be bought, especially with a wife and child, there's never enough money to to ever feel safe. But the thing is, it's like, um, the funniest thing is that I I can't, like, I feel like that's the precise place where I need to be, where I have enough motivation to keep myself working, but not enough money to feel like I can just kind of like I can just, you know,
Well,
relax
but
and do nothing.
but I mean, your son, he's 5, 4, 5, right? I mean, I don't know I don't know if you understand how much children cost, but I mean, my daughter is in tennis lessons twice a week, right?
Yeah.
That's 130, and if she's in piano lessons, that's 60, right? So like that's just money, just like take it and just just take it,
Yeah.
throw it in it. Like it's not even part of the budget anymore. It's just if she needs to do it, it's got to happen, right? And then it just you're raising a child. Every extra bit of money that you can make, it's not gonna hurt.
Well, that's the thing. What's funny is, like I said, in terms of just like levels or whatever, like in theory, um, there are international schools, private schools, like
Yep.
20 grand a year, 30, 40 grand a year for elementary school, middle school, high school. And I'm just like, okay, that's, you know, like if I had the money, sure. Or if I wanted to bankrupt myself right now, sure.
Well,
But
but that's I mean, because I'm sure sooner or later your wife is going to look at you and say, yeah, let's do it.
well,
And
right.
and that's going to require you to kind of get out of the comfort zone and just say, okay, let's get the money.
But to
And
me,
and
that, like I
that
said,
is
that is part of the struggle where I'm just like, okay, well, is it worth it? These are the questions I would love to ask an older
well,
parent, because I'm just like, okay, look,
and this is one of the things that I think we miss in not having that kind of connected legacy, if you will,
yeah,
is that if mom is at home and mom is not telling her child every day like your dad ain't shit, your dad ain't shit, he should be here doing some stuff, but he out working, he out chasing hoes. Like if she's not doing that, instead she's like, you know, your dad is out working, he's busting his behind, he's doing it for you. When he gets here, you show him respect, and like he sees you for like 30 minutes a day. He's like, oh my God, my dad's here. Fuck yes, yes, absolutely yes. And then you can look at your wife, be like, I got you, girl. I got you. I got you. Right. And then like you can say, you know what? Let's pop out some more puppies. We got something working here. Let's do it. Right. And like you could go on that grind for 10 years. And like, okay, we're good. We're in a situation now where everything's okay. But like I would say that if children are being raised correctly, they need their mother about 75% of the time. And they need their father about 20-25%. Like sit down and eat your cereal. I'm not going to sit down and eat it. Okay, I'm going to tell your father. He ain't going to do nothing. And then you show home, be like, excuse me.
but here's the thing. Like this is, I hear what you're saying, but for me, like the 25-75 ratio is fine, but to me, it's like I'm also fighting against my own experience.
Yeah.
Because the legacy that I'm coming off of is I never saw my mom. I never saw my dad. Like like I said, like if I wanted to talk to them, I had to wake them up like in the morning, right? Because they went to work before I did. I was at school. I came home, they were gone. You know, I went to sleep and they would come home, you know, like that was kind of like my life for most of my childhood. And uh, and so for me, that's why like I put a premium on presence, on actually being available and being able to impart anything, you know, uh, because even looking at that ratio, I feel like I'm doing that ratio now because basically he's kind of a home all day with mom. And then I come home maybe like, you know, 3, 4, in terms of being able to hang out, like maybe 3-4 hours a day, which I think is awesome. Like for me, like that's a luxury to be able to spend like, have 2 meals with them a day, and then like nap time, like sit through nap time or whatever. But that's the thing. It's like that's you know that to me is really cool. That's really great that I'm able to do that. But I'm actually very protective of that because this past week I've had to be working a little bit more because I'm starting this new business, right? So basically, this past month, I've been, I'm still trying to build the business up. So now, like, there will be days where I don't see him at all, and I'm just like, okay, well, is that okay?
No, it's okay. It's
You
okay.
know,
It's okay.
do I want to make that a habit? Do I
It's
want to
okay.
make this a zone where I'm like, okay, well, this year,
But you
let
do. But
me
it's
X
okay.
months
It's
do this
okay. And
thing
you know why it's okay? I'll tell you why
because
it's
I'm
okay.
thinking about it.
No, no, because you already have established a relationship with your son. So your
Hmm.
son understands like you might be teaching him a better lesson by not being there because he's waking up some days and he's like, oh,
He
I'm gonna
knows. He knows I want to be there. He
well
knows I want to be with him.
well that part and he's waking up some days I want to see Papa and it's like and your wife is like Papa's got to go to work. He got to make it happen. And he's probably thinking all these questions in his head like, oh well,
Why
oh
can't he just stay home all
no
the
no
time?
no 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 not that. He's saying like, oh, Papa must be the big dog. Like I want to be a big dog like Papa. Like I want to figure out what that Papa's doing every day. And then you
Hmm.
sit down and tell him like, oh well, this is what Papa does. This is how I make money. You want to come to work with Papa one day? It comes and he's just like, and then he goes to his friends at school. It's like, well, my dad he does this. My dad does this, and he's the big dog. You. And then he's walking around with his mother. Like that's why I'm saying like it's not equal. It's not equal like because like a child they understand because it happened with my father. Like my father wasn't like he was holding me I guess when I was a young kid, but I mean my father was engineer guy. So like there was days like I was like I want to see dad, I want to see dad, and mom was just like, well, he's got to work. And then when dad comes home and gives me 30 minutes, those 30 minutes fucking matter. Like it's not like, oh, dad's giving me 3 hours, just give me 30 minutes. Okay. And then dad runs off and I was like, what is dad doing all day? And then you go to work and you see it or you get a feel for like what he's doing. You're like, you know what? I want to be like him. Like that's the thing, right? Like a man is not going to nurture his children like I want to be a nurturer. Like that's not how it works. Like men go out and kind of make shit happen, right? And like
Yeah.
I'm sure the women do it as well, but more so, especially for a boy looking up to his father, like, oh yeah, my dad's got the thing going. Did I tell you my dad was talking about buying a car? Yeah, man. My dad's about to buy a car, man. We went to Lego, we went to Legoland in Japan. For real? Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
I mean, yeah.
Because we got it like that, because that's my pops. You feel me? Yeah. And then you walk into the house like woo, had a rough day today, and your son's walking inside like, hey, it's okay, dad. It's okay, dad. I know you're working hard. You want the extra piece of big chicken? Okay, you got. I will let you have it today.
It's gonna take. I think it's gonna be a few years before he's having those thoughts. I think, but
Well,
maybe 2 years.
probably, but there's a difference between recognizing and appreciating,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like I maybe your son is not old enough yet to appreciate, but he certainly recognizes.
Hmm.
Okay, mom is
I
here,
hope so.
dad's not here. Like, where's dad at? And your wife says like, oh well, dad's hustling because you got to hustle. He's a hustler. And you come back home from hustling. It's like every day I'm hustling, every day I'm hustling, and he's just like, I want to be a hustler like you. I think that's essentially like childhood for boys,
Yeah.
growing up with their fathers, right? Like I would say even in a negative sense, right? Like if you are for a child that's growing up in a single home and they know who their father is and he's not there all the time, but they know what he does, they want to do whatever he's doing.
Yeah.
So if he's a basketball player or selling drugs or he's out doing crazy stuff, they'd be like, oh well, you know, that's what I want to be. I want to be like him.
That is the other aspect of children that I think is so, I feel like very, very underrated, which is, and we've touched on this before, is that everything that they live is normal. Like basically, you know, like you said, it's like, okay, dad's a drug dealer, there's no judgment there. That's just the reality. You know, if dad's a clown, that's just the reality. Dad's a, you know, if dad's a, you know, an engineer, that's the reality. Like,
Truck driver.
and so,
yep.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, you know, dad beats up mom every night. That's normal. Dad, you know, is a serial killer. That's normal. You know, like that's, it's as crazy as it sounds. I feel like a lot of people underestimate that in terms of just like how do kids like recognize. But I think people, you know, they don't realize that everything in the child's world is new, and so everything that they encounter becomes their normal.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's interesting. I think that's a really cool aspect, you know, getting away from like the serial killing and the abuse and all that stuff. But like, but when it comes to, you know, it's neat because at least that there is that innocence of dad's the hero, dad's the big dog, like you said. It's like dad is, you know, whatever dad does.
Especially for boys, right?
Yeah.
Especially for boys, because remember, for girls, it's different. Like if a girl is at home with her mother and her mom goes in the kitchen and starts cooking, there's going to be a natural inclination for her to want to go in the kitchen and see what her mom's doing. But like for boys, I mean, I'm not saying all boys, but in general, boys they're gonna remember the last thing they were doing with their father, and they're gonna try and emulate that. And then when dad comes home, they were like, "Hey, look, dad, I was building Legos and I made this." And like, you know, you give them like 10 minutes of like, "Oh, that's really awesome. Like, you know what? Let me take a picture of that. Show me how you made it." And then he goes like,
So quick side note though.
My daddy said he liked how I'm doing, so I'm gonna build a big one tomorrow. Go ahead,
but quick side note, and I'm very curious. I'm curious about this this question, or this situation. So, my son loves Minnie Mouse, and when my wife and I got married, we went to Disney World for our honeymoon, and while we were there, I bought this Minnie Mouse doll, probably maybe this big, I guess, like fairly sizable, but I got it for my wife. And then like I think at some point my son kind of got attached to it, and then like by virtue of that doll kind of learned who Minnie Mouse was. We haven't actually watched any of the cartoons. Oh, we have now, we've watched some of the cartoons, but he loves Minnie Mouse, right? And so we go outside. A lot of Korean parents, a lot of Korean moms, I should say, are going like, why is your boy holding on to a pink doll? You know, and he's just like, oh, he likes Minnie Mouse. That's it. And I'm just like, I'm cool with it, right? And then like about a week ago, it's been raining a little bit these days, and he came up to me and he's like, I want some rain boots. And I'm like, all right, let's go buy some rain boots, because you've outgrown your other rain boots. So let's go to the store. Let's get some rain boots. And we go to the store, and I was like, okay, so what kind of rain boots do you want? He's like, I want mini rain boots. I'm like, mini rain boots? Oh, you mean like Minnie Mouse rain boots? He's like, yeah. He's like, I want pink mini rain boots. And I'm just like, and I was like, you know what? I mean, I want to.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, I'm okay with you hanging out.
That is so funny. That's like 2021 problems. Like,
but you know what I'm saying? But I'm just like, I'm okay with him hanging out. I'm okay with him holding the doll around, because I'm just like, all right, it's kind of like a mock girlfriend, I guess. And maybe I'm just exposing like my own, you know, whatever prejudice or whatever. But I'm just like, there's just something. I'm just like, man, I think you're gonna take a lot of heat for wearing the pink, you know, the pink mini rain boots. Something. I can't pull the trigger on this, dude. I can't.
Yeah. That might be one you need to let your wife be like, hey, listen.
So that's why I was going to defer to my wife.
Because like I'm sure, like if she said, she said, no, you're gonna get the blue ones. And she said, I want the pink ones. She's like, nope, blue ones. Like, I mean, I don't know how a boy argues with his mother on that. So,
but like, but that's the thing. Like, I remember, I'm just like, am I being? So am I being too?
No,
whatever.
No, you're not. No, you're not.
I don't know,
No.
but I was just like, I can't pull the trigger on it. I was just like, no,
it would be different if there's multicolor with no Minnie Mouse. That's one thing, but pink Minnie Mouse, no.
I'm just like, I can't do it, man.
I mean, I'm sure, like you will get some backlash on this video, like, how could you be so sexist? Like, hey, listen.
but for no other reason than like, you know, he would just, I don't know, like it might, because again, I was trying to do all the permutations in my head where I'm just like, okay, well maybe in the one regard, maybe he needs to get bullied, or maybe he needs the societal thing. We get it for him, and everyone's making fun of him. I was thinking of, what is it? I was thinking of that movie, the Adam Sandler movie, Big Daddy. Did you ever see that movie?
I've seen that.
Where I think the kid, where Adam Sandler just listens to the kid. I think the kid, I can't remember what it was, but the kid wanted to be called, like, change his name to like Dinosaur or something like that, and then he wanted to change, and he there's something clothing wise that he wanted to wear. I think he wanted to like wear a monster head or something like that, and like a helmet, and like some crazy boots at school. And Adam Sandler just let him do whatever he wanted to do or whatever. I can't remember, but I thought about that movie. I'm just like, no, I can't do that. I'm not just gonna listen to my kid.
That's one of the things where I would say, like, I would say, like, no, I'm not. Oh, you know what? I remember this. I remember when I was in junior high. It was Lilburn, right? And there were these shoes called Solo Flights, right? They were like these high. There's just Nikes, right? Solo Flights, right? And I remember that I wanted a pair so bad. I wanted a pair so bad. And this is not even like feminine, any of that stuff. This is just like, I wanted it. Like, I remember my dad said, nope, you cannot have those shoes. Probably because they were too expensive. Not probably, because they were too expensive. And then I remember my mom went out and bought some for me.
Oh, nice.
And then my dad was like, take them back. He's like, take them back. You're teaching the wrong lesson. And I remember the lesson was basically, you're not spending that much money on a pair of shoes, right? So I took him back, and I was like, whatever. And like, I remember him telling me, like, there's no pair of shoes that's worth that much amount of money, at least not sneakers. And so I remember I ended up getting a pair of Solo Flights like 2 years later when they weren't so expensive. And my dad was like, okay, you can have them now, but you understand the point? And I was like, okay, I get it, right? But like, you know, that's I learned that lesson. So that's one thing that's one of those lessons that only, you know, someone that with a stern, because remember, with women, I mean, they birthed the child, so it's really easy for them to say, oh, you want to eat chocolate cake for dinner? Okay, fine, you can have chocolate cake for dinner.
But that's the hard thing, though. Like, speaking of, like, I mean, it's like I said, it's this weird balance, because on the one hand, like, so on the one end of the spectrum, there's the international school, which I don't have the money for, you know, but in terms of just like random other nonsense, it's hard for me to be like, no, because it costs too much, or it costs, you know, like, because like for me, I'm just like,
you need to,
yeah, I'm fine to buy these shoes. I
need to learn
like
that.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's like, I realized that this year, because this might sound crazy. Well, I don't know how this will sound to you. It sounded crazy to me, but basically we are less than 5 months into
21.
Well, 2021. But basically, like, his birthday's January. We had Christmas, and then we just had Children's Day. We had a couple of other sort of holidays over this past few months, and I think I've spent like $600 on gifts for him over this stretch, and I'm just like, wait a second, man, like this is crazy. I think I don't think and I was just thinking about my own childhood, is that like I don't think I got more than like $100 worth of gifts. I mean, I get inflation or whatever, but like in like a year, I got like, maybe $100 worth of gifts, and that was maybe like 2 gifts, like one for Christmas, one for, my birthday, and that was it. And then like, and just thinking, I was like, oh my God, I spent $600, $600+ on my kid, in like 5 months.
Not only $600, you spent $600 on most likely toys that he didn't even,
just like toys.
He hasn't even touched. Like the first day I play, and like a week later it's like, yeah, in a box.
It's just nonsense. And that's what I think is so funny, is that like he has no concept of money, because like in that sort of pile of $600 worth of toys, there's like a $2 toy that he'll play with all the time, and there's like a $100 toy that he'll touch maybe like once or twice or whatever. And I'm just like, what am I doing? Like, and then there's like it's like a piece of paper. Like I remember he was playing with pieces of paper like a year ago. And it was like his favorite thing in the world was like this laminated piece of paper.
But that's where the consequences come in. Like, if you want to see the worst behaving children, those are the children whose parents cannot tell them no.
Yeah.
Like they can't tell them no. They're always placating. Oh, well, if I buy this, well, you're going to act okay. If I get you this, let you eat this, are you going to be quiet? And they're like, yeah, I'll be quiet until I want something else.
Yeah.
But like, if you can see that, especially in school, right? Like you can tell which parents tell their kids no and which parents are just trying to make their kids like them. Because look, like if there's a lesson to be learned about being a parent, is you want your kids to respect you, not like you.
Yeah.
Like liking, and that's not just for kids, that's just in general. Like I don't give a fuck if you like me or not. Like you're going to respect me. And this is something I deal with when I have a friend down the street whose little girl comes over and plays with my daughter, right? And like, look, you don't have to like me, but when I say we're not doing so and such, this is what's going to be. Like, I'm 44, you are 6. No. Do you understand? No. Yeah, but my mommy said no. And the reason they have to understand that is because, simply put, society is going to tell you no. It's going to tell you no. And what you're going to do, buck against society? Okay, good luck with that. Because that's a lesson that boys have to learn, right? And gosh, I could go a whole tirade or a whole whatever, but men that grew up with their fathers, they understand properly how to deal with being told no. But men that don't get that, they get on their feelings like, well, why are you telling me no? It's not fair. It's not fair. Like, life is not about fair. It's not about fair. I said no, don't do it. Either you choose something else to do or change something, but don't complain about why I said no. Please say no. Yeah, but I feel like you're discriminating against me. Oh, really? Okay, here's this taser in your mouth. Bow. Let's go to the county jail, right? So
that's funny, but like, or actually no, it's not funny. It's sad, but ultimately, I think like.
Well, it's not sad it's not sad when grown men learn
it. Yeah, but I think you're right. I mean, ultimately, it's the toughest thing. Again, speaking of sort of first world problems or whatever, is that like, it is also a challenge to do that, because I'm not so concerned about like him not liking me or him not loving me or him not respecting me or whatever. My thing is, there are just times where I'm just like, I got this big smile on my face. I'm just like, oh man, okay, he's doing something wrong. I need to put on the game face. I need to make him know that like this is not cool. But I'm just like, I really can't.
But Jordan Peterson, he has a really good Yeah, I'm listening to one of his books now. Jordan Peterson has a really good saying about parenting. He says, I think he has a book called 12 Laws for Life or something. And he said, never let your child act in a way in which you don't like how they're behaving, or something similar to that, right? Like, don't let them act in a way where you don't like them because of the way they're behaving. Like, if they're acting in a way that is abhorrent or just unacceptable, you have to tell them, look, you're whining, you're acting a fool, you're self-pitying, and I don't like it because of this reason. And you need to stop doing that because I don't like it. Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, it's the opposite, right? It's basically the opposite of what you just said, where instead of the parents wanting or trying to let the kids like them, it should be the opposite.
That's right.
The kids should be acting so that the parents like the kids.
That's right.
You know, like, and that, or not just the parents, but like, I think ultimately, I think Jordan Peterson said, like, anyone, like other people's parents also need to like the kid as well.
That's right. That's right. Know? That's right.
But that's the thing. It's like, it's interesting because I think most people behave in that opposite way, where they're just like, they want desperately for their kid to like them, but it actually should be the opposite. They need structure things so that, you know, the kid needs to be doing things so that the parents like that. And that's the lesson that they need to learn.
Well, and the reason that lesson's so important is because you're looking for the child's long-term benefit.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
You are not going to shape society to your whims and desires. Like, society is going to be what it is. People are going to act how they are, or how they're going to act. If you're going to go into society selfish, then you might be able to get what you want for a little bit of time, whatever, but given enough time and you're going to paint yourself into a corner being selfish or whatever, and you're going to be unhappy. Like, you have to understand it's not all about what you want and your happiness. You have to grow past that. So,
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's interesting because a lot of this also ties into what we were talking about last week in terms of being humble, right? Because
humility. You think humility still exists in 2021?
Jeez. Well, that's what's interesting, right? Because this is why I think that when you talk about power, this is where you get this sort of perfect storm where if you already have an attitude that you are undeniable and that your stuff is the most important, your opinion is actually really a big deal, and then you happen to get a bunch of money so that people start reinforcing,
or you're born to parents with a lot of money,
or sure, but in the modern society, it's like, that's why I feel like YouTubers, right? You see all these YouTubers, you know, they get a platform and then they do these sort of crazy, silly things, and you're just like, well, what else did you expect to happen? You know, like if you're sort of a person that's already kind of a narcissist, and then you surround them with a bunch of yes people.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen after a few years? You know, if not instantly, but like over time, you're just going to see monster abuses.
Oh, they're just going to be living a I don't know, is it sub-reality? Does that make sense? Like, their reality is going to be dictated by the people around them in their social media orbit, and then they're going to run into normal, regular people who don't know who they are.
Exactly.
And they're going to be like, I said, give me 2 ketchups, bitch. And they were like,
yeah. And that exactly, but that's when they butt up against society or larger societies or even other you know, narcissistic people that don't care about them. It's like, then you create the strife.
Well,
right?
then the world's going to crumble.
Yeah.
And they might do something stupid because they don't understand. Yeah.
Because they have the money to do it, because they have the means to do it. And so that's what's interesting too. I feel like, again, that's another reason why the world's in flux. The world's in this transition period in terms of how to become what is the importance of society and how to become a society. You know, like it's.
Well, I will say this, try to wrap up a little bit, but I would say that now more than ever is a time where good parenting is really important. And when I say good parenting is simply giving your child boundaries. I mean, you can let them know that I love you no matter what. You can give that. You can give them that. That's easy. Boundaries, telling your kid no. Like, you got to tell your kids no, especially now. Like, when we were kids, like, we were excited to watch Mr. Wizard's World in the morning on Nickelodeon. We're like, oh my God, I get to watch Mr. Wizard's World, and then I get to go to school and study science. Oh my God, this is awesome. And like, you have kids now who have cable television and don't even watch it because they have a doggone tablet cell phone and they have their own TikTok accounts. Like, no, you're TikToking and you're an elementary school? No, negative, incorrect. So kids with their own YouTube and TikTok and Instagram accounts, going live on Instagram, like, just no, you got to say no to some of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm very curious to see how those things sort of develop. I'm curious to see what the next generation, what the consequences are of this present generation's sort of development in social media, because I'm curious to see, like, these, especially like these, you know, really young YouTubers, like these, whatever. Like, there's so many, like, really young YouTubers.
Oh yeah, you're talking about Ryan's World, right?
Like, Ryan's World is the biggest one. I just saw like another one. I think his name is like the Axel Show or something like that. This young kid named Axel, he's like 9 years old.
Now. There's some here too in Japan. I know you're talking about.
But just like, I'm curious, like, you know, they're, I don't know, millionaires probably. Like, they probably make a fair amount of money. I'm curious, like, what, you know, and they're not fully formed. They're kids, and then, like, you know, what is it going to be like to grow up in this sort of
Britney Spears is going to happen. Todd Bridges is going to happen. That's what's going to happen.
We'll see. You know, again, like, that's what I'm curious about. Like, I guess if there's definitely the parallel with celebrity, but just the fact that, you know, these kids are so young. I guess yeah. I mean, Britney and you know, what's his name, Gary Coleman, Todd Bridges. Like, I guess all those kid stars were all kind of similar, I suppose. But I don't know how many there are. Like, because I feel like, at least back in the day, a child star, maybe there was like a handful. But like, I feel like with the YouTube age, there's innumerable.
Yeah.
I feel like these kids with different audiences.
Yeah.
And
good parents are not allowing their children to do that. Like, I mean, it's one thing to say, you know, we're going to fight our way out of family poverty and do this, but if your family is decently well off and you're prostituting your child out there, so
but I mean, isn't that like, to me, and again, I don't know how to interpret this, but it's interesting to me that there's a portion of the audience that's just like, I'm going to blur my kid's face from, you know, from social media. And then there's this other side where it's just like, you know what, my kid's face is front and center. They are the product. And I'm just like, there's,
wow. Those some of those, I mean, because you got to remember, part of the YouTube thing is it's not real. It's okay, all right, guys, everyone act happy, click. Right. And so you're gonna have kids growing up and like, I hated all of that shit. And you knew I didn't want to do it. Why did you make me do it? And they're gonna fall out with their parents, and you're gonna have Britney Spears. Like, well, I own the estate and I own all the rights to the YouTube accounts, and you don't get any, you know, whatever, right? So I feel sorry for those kids.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for them.
Yeah, for sure. But
my daughter asked me, can I have a YouTube account? I was like, are you out of your effing mind? No. No. Can't have an effing YouTube account. Are you nuts? No.
Well, now, well, I guess like Mother's Day is officially over now. It's interestingly enough, but I think yeah, I don't know. I think it's tough. I think it's tough to be a good mom. I think it's tough to be a good parent. Uh, and
but it's always, I think it always has been.
it
Like
always has been. And
I mean,
I
I
think
think if there's any common denominator to being a good parent, it is it is a daily re-evaluation of how you're being a parent, like daily, like not necessarily saying I was right or I was wrong, but just how can I be better? Because our parents raised us the way that they thought was best for us based on their upbringing, but we have the opportunity to read books and watch YouTube documentaries, and we can learn how to be better parents. Like I started
I
out
think
thinking that I should spank my daughter, and I haven't spanked her in 3, 4, 5 years because there are better ways, in my opinion, to discipline her. So
yeah, I think it's interesting because just in our conversation today, I realized that parenting needs to go on my list of 3 jobs that people think are that people don't think are jobs, I guess. Or people like basically um jobs, really hard jobs that people don't think are jobs. And
what
I
are
think
the other two? Parenting, what, cooking? Cook?
so the number one for me is teaching. People just
Oh,
assume people
hell
just
man.
assume that if
Dude.
you know something, you can teach it. People never think that teaching is a
Teaching is so incredibly underrated, dude. You have no idea, man.
number two is managing people. Is that like again, people just assume that if you're good at a thing, then you can just be a manager. Okay, now you are in charge of people. It's a whole other skill set. And those were the 2 that were just always on my list for a long time. But now, like as we talk, I'm just like, yeah, I think people just assume that anyone can be a parent, but actually no. Like well, anyone can be a parent, yes, but they all suck at it. Like like
Yeah, good
in
parent.
order
Yeah, a
to be
good
a good
parent.
parent,
I mean,
it's not a
if
given. It's
if
not a
you
given.
want to be a good parent, you have to be continuously looking for output and changing behavior, and like if you can't parent like a logic puzzle, or what's it called? Not Venn diagram. What do you call it? What do you call the logic flow charts? You can't
Oh
parent
yeah,
like that. Like
yeah, yeah.
if child does this, then X. If child does this,
Right,
no, that's not
right,
how
right.
it works. But sometimes child comes home, they're super emotional, and it's because something bad happened at school. And sometimes they come home super emotional because they don't want to do their effing homework. So like you're gonna sit
Yeah.
down and do your effing homework, or oh, some kid today said something about your hair today. You didn't like it? What happened? And like you can't treat them the same. So, and the only way you can be a good parent is you have to, on a daily basis, be willing to look at your child and say, okay, well, something is up today. Let me see if I can figure out what
I
it
mean,
is.
but I don't want to open up a can of worms again. But like, but I feel like that's why you need to be there. Like you need to put your 10,000 hours in. You need to develop that sense with your kid. That's why I feel like nannies and
No,
in-laws and all that stuff. It's
that's
like
not
okay,
it.
it's great. It's great to
But
have the extra
I would
hands.
say this is why two parents have to be in tune with each other,
Sure.
right? Because like I'll give you an example with you and your son, right? Like I don't know if you believe in corporal punishment. You probably don't, but there's going to be a time sooner or later when your son is so big and so strong that your wife is going to be like, "Hey, sit down." He's like, "I don't feel like it," and then she's going to be like, "Mike, you gonna walk in with like the WWE belt, like, hey, you want to live in this house with me? You don't talk to nobody like that." And he's like, "What you gonna do?" you might have to like turn all the cell phones off and turn everything in recording devices off for like 15 minutes and be like, "Hey, listen," and then he remember that one. But you see what I'm saying, right? Like
Yeah.
there's just parenting needs two people. You can't, you can do your best with one parent, but you really need two parents. You really do. And you
It's
need two parents
wild.
working together.
It's
You just
wild
do.
because, yeah, it's wild because, like, so I hear what you're saying, absolutely. Like, in terms of having both parents be on the same page.
Yeah.
But it's funny, and I know we're trying to wrap up here, but I think it's interesting because what you just said also made me think of this news report that happened last week in Korea, where there was some sort of camera footage. I forgot how they captured it of like kindergarten teachers screaming at kids to go to sleep. And like there was one instant, there were like these different like stories. I think basically three of them in the past month. Weirdly, like they came in rapid succession. I think it's because the preschools just started sort of opening up again. but there were these three stories in rapid succession. One of them was a kid was smothered to death, actually.
Oh, wow.
Was actually murdered. One of them was like really like yelled at, like just like this lady was like screaming. I don't think obscenities, but just like was just like really berating this kid.
Yeah.
And like one of them was a situation. I think the kid was just like left alone somewhere. Like they wandered out, they wandered out of the preschool, and no one, and they forgot about him or something like that. It was just like this terrible story. But all these like bad stories about like these kindergarten. And the reason I bring it up is because didn't want to murder a kid ever, but or smother a kid to death. But like I feel like there was this strong reaction like against it. But I feel like half the parents that were probably complaining about the actions of these teachers, I don't know. I think yelling, like, I don't know. I didn't see the yelling, but I feel like there are probably some parents that scream at their kids too, and probably threaten their kids and do like
Oh, no doubt about it. No doubt about it.
And just because it's someone else doing it, maybe that's why they're getting mad. Again, excluding the murder, but like I think it's sort of the same weird mindset where it's just like, okay, I'm gonna put a blanket on you until you fall asleep. You know, I smothered the kid to death. That's pretty messed up. You know, but the thing is, like, I feel like again, the reaction of it is there's like this weird hypocrisy to it where it's just like we need to kind of be realistic about, you know, how we deal with how we deal with kids and how we discipline kids. And like you said, sometimes they can drive you crazy, sometimes they can push you pretty far. Like, well, I can't imagine a scenario now, but like if my kid was like,
you have to imagine,
on,
imagine being a worker at a childcare facility where you have a bunch of kids whose parents never tell them no.
Right.
They never tell them no. So like you have one or two choices, right? Either you could acquiesce to that and just let the child act crazy and then the other children act crazy, or B, you can say, hey, listen, I don't give a F what happens at your house. Here are the rules of this. And like, you know, the funny thing about kids is that they'll follow the rules. They'll follow the rules because you have some kids they'll probably play victim, like, oh, he's mad at me.
But that situation is compounded though, because so you can have a scenario where the kid is a little bit of a snot, but the nightmare scenario is if the kid is a snot and the parents they reinforce that, and they actually, like, if the kid's out of line, the parents protect the kid.
So you're talking about like elementary school in America?
But I mean, I'm just like, you know, I'm just talking like a lot of parents in general.
I would be a garbage man before I do that job. What's the worst job you could do in America? I don't know, policeman. I don't know. What's the worst job? What's the worst job you can do in America? I don't know, mayor of Atlanta. I would do any of those jobs before I'd be an elementary school teacher in America. Because oh, my sweet baby, how you gonna yell at my sweet baby? Well, then you come here and teach that mother. You come teach 35 of these spoiled mother. I quit. God. I mean, I cannot imagine the kind of entitlement that kids are coming to school with. Like, ooh, God.
In a certain affluent neighborhood.
The teacher yelled at me today because I couldn't do the question because I wasn't trying. Well, did you try? No, because he was mad at me. It's like, okay. All right. You do understand there's a whole country full of Chinese kids that aren't going through this crap and they're going to whoop your ass. You understand that, right? A whole bunch of Chinese kids, they get smacked on the hand and they just look at the teacher like, I'm sorry, I want to try harder. You understand there's a whole fucking country full of kids like that. And they speak English better than you do, God damn it. You better fucking grow up.
We're gonna have to put the parent advisory on this episode.
My child said that he was writing a period and so and such. You chastised him too hard about his English. Okay, all right. Yeah. So
anyway, I think
man.
Happy Mother's Day, man.
No, of course. Oh, and happy. It's not even Mother's Day anymore, is it?
Yeah, happy day after.
Happy day after Mother's Day. But yeah. Well, take care of yourself and dude. You're the father, dude. You gotta tell that boy no sometimes, man.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying.
Pink boots.
Hey, man, I said no. Well, it's only because we didn't find him. But like, even if we found him, I think I would.
Oh yeah, how about this? You say you could buy pink boots when you save up your own money.
Yeah.
Like let him like work cleaning up toys and stuff for like 6 months, and he's like, "You still want to buy them pink boots?" He's like, "You know what? I'm gonna get this transform over here, dog. I'm good."
I mean, at the end of the day, like all I'm saying is, I do say no, but it's not an easy thing. Like, because again, like for me,
I got a big
smile on my face. I'm just like, I love this kid, even though my wife, and I think that's one of the perks of being the 25% guy. Because I'm the 25% guy, I can come in with a big smile on my face, and I can say no.
Dude, I should record some of the back and forths I have with my daughter. I love my daughter. Like when she half-asses it at tennis, or when she gives me an attitude about not wanting to practice piano, I'm like, hey, you're cute. You're a cute little girl. I get all of that. Your ass is gonna sit down and your ass is gonna practice piano for 30 mother minutes, and you're gonna do it with a good attitude. Like, look. I'm not. Look. The reason why I'm so good about that is because I teach kids at school, and I see both the extremes, girls and boys. I see girls that come in like, yes, teacher, I'm going to do my best today, and they try their best and they don't do their best, and like, I'm sorry, I'm going to try my best tomorrow. I can tell that that's like two parents at home saying, hey, listen, gotta do your best. And then I see, girls and boys like, well, I shouldn't have to be. It's not fair. It's like, what are you talking about? Fair? Who told you about this idea of fair? Where did that come from? Like, as soon as you leave school, everything is not fair anymore. Like, school is like, life is fair until you finish high school. Then it's not fair anymore. Like, grow up. Come on, man. Hell, man. Life is fair. Life is fair when you're in elementary school. Then people start paying for exclusive tutors and all kinds of crazy stuff, and all of a sudden, your friend that you were sitting next to is 2 grade levels ahead of you, and you're like, "Why? It's not fair." It's like, no, that's just the way the world works. Grow up. So, yeah.
All right, man.
Yeah, man. All right.
That was good.
All right. Take care. I'll take care. I'll take you next week. Yeah. All right. Later, man.
Bye.